once someone's in office and they're entrenched and they want to run for re-election. It's very hard to get rid of them. As we can see, like some of these senators that have been there for 40 years and some of these members of the House, like Charles Rangel of New York, that's been there since I was 9 years old. So that'll just tell you how long he's been there. So is the format we take questions now, Jess, or do we want to just bring Claire?
Let's get Claire.
Okay, we'll get Claire up and up and down. Okay, let me introduce her, or do you want to do that?
You go for it.
The next comptroller of the state of Illinois and the only accountant, and I think the nicest one of the people running. Claire Ball.
Thank you, to present bond-fayette comptroller Libertarians for putting this on. I'm Claire Ball. I'll go through my boilerplate speech here first. In 197-year history of Illinois, back when we were a territory, all the way up till now, we have never had an accountant in the office of the comptroller. And the number one question that I get from people is, well, what is a comptroller? So comptroller is the record keeper for our financial records, handles the annual financial reports, gathers annual financial information from the lower levels of our government, and is also responsible for payment authorization, which is what you're hearing about in the news right now, is when there's no budget and very little money to dole out, the comptroller is the person that decides who gets paid and why they get paid, this vendor over that vendor. So the fact that if you boil it down to the actual functions of the office, it's an accounting job. So the fact that we've never had an accountant in that office, it ruffles my accounting feathers. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in accounting and finance. I just passed the CPA, and I've got over 10 years experience in the field. So I'm definitely qualified to help with some of the issues that we're seeing in the comptroller's office, and there are plenty. Right now, and over the last several years, we have been late in getting out our annual financial reports, late by more than a year. You don't see that happening in the publicly traded companies. You don't see that happening in the private world. We are also, we the people, the ones who are footing the bills, we can't see into why some vendors are getting paid over others. So we're 2 years without a budget, and we've had payments going out the door for things like lobbyist services and political bloggers. You can find all of that online. The checkbook is online. But what you don't see is why those vendors were paid. Those vendors were paid, and then the comptroller's office comes out and says things like, we can't pay these social service companies that are in dire need, that are shutting their doors and having to reduce their workforce. There's just no money. Then why were lobbyist firms and political bloggers paid? I would think, if you're talking priority, that those companies that depend almost solely on government funding to keep rolling would be more important than a lobbyist firm. But maybe that's just me. But what I want to do is I want to bring some accountability and some real transparency into the office of the comptroller. This position's been used as a political stepping stone and a political reward for the entirety of its existence that needs to end. We need to get the financial reports out on time, and we need to be able to explain the who, the what, the where, most importantly, the why behind every financial decision that our elected officials are making on our behalf. I want to establish a table of priority that lays out in plain English, here's who's getting paid first, here's what order they're getting paid in, here's why, and if we deviate from that schedule, I'm going to let you know why. At the top of that list would be the mandated payments, the things that were required by law to get out the door. Things we can't get around, our debt service payments, that kind of thing. Next up would be the social service providers, the ones who depend almost solely on state funding. And after that, I think I've got 5 tiers. I've got it laid out. I think I've got it on my website. I think we've got it on my website.
No.
Or not yet.
It might be.
But at any rate, laying this out gives you all a benchmark. Gives everyone, all of us, a benchmark to be able to say, are they doing this? Are they paying people the way that they promised us they would? Right now, there's no way to follow if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. One way that you would think you could do that is through budgeting. You should be able to say, all right, here's what they budgeted for the year, here's what they actually are spending. One, we have no budget. We haven't had one for 2 years. But if you were to just look at the departments and look at their older budgets, the comptroller's office budget from 2015 was made up 78% of personal services, 78% of the descriptions, right? So this is $113 million budget, and 78% of that, they had no further detail beyond personal services. So how are we supposed to know when a check goes out the door if it's for that line item of personal services or that line item of personal services? You don't do that. You wouldn't see that in your job, and we shouldn't be seeing it in our government. So I want to put some real detail into the comptroller's budget, the one that I would have purview over, and then I want to call out the other governmental budgets that are not following these kinds of standards. I want to embarrass them and say, wow, look at all of these, look at how much of their budgets you have no idea where the money's actually going. So that's some of the stuff that the comptroller's office can actually do. And what I want to do is I want to bring the accounting standards that we all have to follow into the role of our government finances. They're not there now, and they need to be. And the way to do that is to bring someone in who not only knows the standards, accountant right here, but someone who's also independent. The independence is absolutely stressed in the accounting world. And who better look over the Democrats and the Republicans and what they're doing than a Libertarian, right? When you're talking independence, it's a no-brainer. You want someone who's not part of either side of the two-party machine. Because I don't care which side's doing it. I don't care. I have no use for their favors. I'm not looking to become best friends with anyone out there. I'm looking to report honestly and accurately and timely about what they're doing with our money. And I'm going to do that regardless of political affiliation. So if you're playing funny with our money, I'm going to call you out on it. And that's what we need in that role. So that's kind of I could go on, but this is not just for me. This is for Kent as well. So so if you guys are ready, Kent could come up as well. We could do a little Q&A and just have some fun here.
Yes, a question. The best questions are concise and short, and we don't necessarily need a lot of backstory, but we can get it if we need it, all right? Don.
For Claire, how's Illinois' bond rating, and how would transparency in this office improve that bond rating?
It's a good question. So what is our bond rating? I believe our bond rating is a B-. I think, unless they downgraded it further since then. But more importantly, it's the worst out of all 50 states. We have the worst bond rating in all 50 states. And what more transparency from the Office of the Comptroller would do to help that is, when you're reporting honestly and accurately about the numbers, maybe it's a lot of red ink, but if it's honest, if it's accurate, if it's timely, if you can prove that this information is correct, even if we are in dire straits, which some say we are, going into year 2 with no budget, if you can trust that the numbers that you're getting are accurate, then you can make a more informed decision on the health of the state. And coming absolutely clean gives investors, they can trust in the information you're providing them. Right now, they can't trust in that information because Illinois, they say one thing, they do another. They're going back and forth about they're placing blame on whose fault it is that we don't have a budget. It's like, all right, well, you've both been there. I would say it's both of your faults. And now how are we going to fix it? So the report honestly and accurately about the finances is a first step. It says, here's what's going on. Exactly. No funny business. And when they can verify that information, they're going to be a little bit more, they're more willing to listen to any possible solutions to fixing these problems. It's true in publicly traded companies, and it's true with our government. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, but a follow-up question too. You mentioned something about personal services.
Mhm.
And whenever I think of personal services, I'm equating that to the $36,000 toilet seat. Is that what I'm hearing out of this?
The problem is we don't know. When you've got a $113 million budget and 78% of that budget says personal services, they could be perfectly legitimate expenses necessary to run the office of the comptroller. We have no idea. Or, for all we know, they are personal services to have someone come in and give the staff a massage once a week. We don't know. There's no transparency into that. And there's no way to then even say that you are staying within budget. Okay, if you can't say, here are all the payments, here's the exact category and line item to where they belong, to where we initially budgeted them, here's how, that's a benchmark. That's a way to track how well your government, your business, how well you're doing in that area. We just don't have that. And it's just ridiculous.
Any other questions? Yes.
Question for Mr. McMillen. Most of our national candidates that are running are espousing what their goals or legislation they're going to try to pass or enact within the first 100 days. What would be your goal within the first 100 days if elected to office?
Thank you for the question. I think we need a comprehensive audit of the federal government, and we need to take a look at all departments, all programs, number of employees, their budget. Similar to when a company is not doing well and they bring in an outside auditor to give suggestions on how to make it better. Unfortunately, it usually leads to downsizing, and I want to downsize the size of the federal government. So that would be my first and foremost priority if elected.
Are there any particular programs or departments you?
Oh, just to hit on a few things that I saw on a website called downsizedc.org. There's about 750,000 employees of the Defense Department who are not in the military. They're sitting behind desks somewhere. There are 250 offices of the Commerce Department worldwide. Who knows what they're doing? They're more than likely giving some companies more positive treatment than others in this is international trade. The Department of Health and Human Services has over 500 subsidy programs, including rural utilities, school lunches, radio stations, anything you can imagine. There's also a few other, I don't have the list with me, but a few other federal agencies that have over 100 subsidy programs. The Department of Interior controls, I believe, about 500 million acres of land throughout the country. That can be sold along with government buildings and pipelines and national parks and things like that. So there's all kinds of possibilities out there to make the government a lot smaller and a lot more efficient and move programs to the states, such as Social Security disability. That could conceivably be moved to the states. And the possibilities are endless if you take a look at what's out there and you take a look at what we really need and you take a look at the growth of these departments over the years. Have they gone from 10,000 employees to 40,000 employees in the last 10 years? Code of Federal Regulation, which Congress doesn't even touch, that's done by agencies within the federal, the executive branch, that has grown exponentially over the last 50 years. So if you look at anything, it's grown. I like to say back when I was born in 1961, we didn't have a Department of Education, we didn't have a Department of Transportation, we didn't have a Department of Housing and Urban Development, and we didn't have a Department of the Interior. And from what I was told, for folks that were around at that time, life went on just fine. It seems every time there's a perceived problem in this country, it calls for a new cabinet level agency, with a bunch of programs and tens of thousands of employees making very good salaries and very good pensions. So I want to put the brakes on that, move it in the other direction to make it a smaller federal government. And the ultimate benefit to that would be more money in everyone's pockets, because there will be less of a need for individual taxation, because we wouldn't need as much money to run the federal government.
Thank you. Jan, oh, yes, sir.
Yes, this is for Mr. Kent McMillen. I'm a retired Navy veteran, and I do espoused on the cutting back on the VA programs and going more to the civilian doctors. How would that be how would that be a benefit to me?
Well, you would be able to go to your neighborhood doctor, and maybe a doctor that maybe some folks in your family are familiar with. You wouldn't necessarily have to, but you would have that option.
Well, I get a lot of benefits through the VA now, and would I still have the same?
Yeah, you wouldn't lose anything. It would just take away the bureaucracy. I've talked to quite a few vets in the last 6 months, and none of them are pretty happy with the VA. And obviously we've heard of folks dying, waiting for appointments. There's no excuse for that.
Well, there's a lot of bureaucracy in the VA, like one of your things you could probably cut back on.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Everything's on the table. But I think just as a matter of expediency, the doctor that maybe your wife and your children go to through maybe just for instance your wife's employer, you should be able to go through that by virtue of being a veteran and taking away the step of the VA. And I have no doubt that there's doctors all over the place that are going to step up and take care of you. It's a novel concept, but it's possible. It's just you have to elect the people in Washington that are willing to do that.
Well, I had a military retirement health insurance, and a lot of the doctors won't take it.
They won't take
They won't take TRICARE.
No, you would get a universal card for veterans that would be taken. Not every doctor takes every insurance. They should, but my doctor doesn't take every kind of insurance either. But the goal is to make care more expedient and not have to wait in line to see a doctor if you need to see a doctor. And that's what I've heard quite a bit of over the last 6 months from both written publications and from talking to veterans themselves.
Jan?
Kent, as a Libertarian, can you elaborate on the non-interventionist foreign policy that Libertarians advocate, what that means as opposed to some people misinterpret that to mean isolationism?
Right. Thank you, Jen. So for instance, we really had no reason to go into Iraq. There was no evidence that Iraq was a threat to this country. But it was decided, whether you agree with it or not, by some intelligence from, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but some British intelligence as well as some intelligence that some of our agencies. So we went in there under the guise of defeating someone who was complicit in the war on terror, and that turned out not to be the case. And in conjunction with that, we decided to engage in regime change. So that's, in my opinion, and I think in most Libertarians' opinion, is considered interventionism, when you're not really provoked, but you actively go into a place with the intent of either regime change or stealing your oil or whatever it might be. We're not isolationist because I believe if we were threatened, we would act. And if one of our allies were threatened, we would act. An isolationist would say, no, we wouldn't even do that, even if one of our allies were attacked. And I don't subscribe to that philosophy. But actively going in with the intention of regime change or taking some sort of, natural resource, Libertarians and myself included are against that. And we haven't had a good track record in trying to do that. You can either look at Iraq or Vietnam or Libya, places like that. We just don't do very well when we try to engage in regime change. Thank you.
Other questions? Corey?
What are your guys' thoughts on abortion?
Okay, thank you. In short, I am pro-choice. I think it's a woman's right to do what she wants with her body. But I am against any kind of federal funding for abortion. and I would be in favor of zero funding agencies like Planned Parenthood. I don't like abortion. I'd like it to be rare, safe, and privately funded. If a woman is contemplating such a procedure, it would be my hope that she has a good support system, namely her friends, her family, obviously her doctor, and in her case, if it's applicable, her clergy, her pastor, and that she gets all the information she needs, and she gets the love and the respect that she deserves. But my goal is the same as the pro-life folks. We don't want abortion. It's just that I want to see it accomplished through education and compassion.
Claire?
I think Kent put it very well. I echo a lot of his same sentiments. When it comes to, I don't think that I could ever, that would ever be a choice for me, but I am not in another woman's shoes. And as Ken says, there should be support. You should have the support needed for you to make the best choice for you that involves you, your family, your faith, whatever that should be. Above all else, as a libertarian, we shouldn't as a government be funding that type of thing. It should be privately funded and just get the government out of it. Personal choices, personal decisions, the government should have no role in. But otherwise, my sentiments echo Kent's. He put it very well. Thank you.
Other questions? Well, I have one. What's the difference between the Office of the Comptroller and the Office of the Treasurer?
Ooh, yeah, I can answer that. All right, what's the difference between the Office of the Comptroller and the Office of the Treasurer? The Office of the Comptroller, as I've said, handles the record keeping and the payment authorization for the state. The Office of the Treasurer actually holds that money. They are the keepers of the bank accounts. They handle investing the funds that they currently have so that while it's sitting, we can earn a return on that money. And they are also the ones that actually issue the checks. There's been a lot of talk around combining the two roles. And I think I'm a bit different, a bit unique from most libertarians in that I don't support combining the two offices. And I think I've got some good reasons for it. My reasoning comes from an accounting perspective. In every good accounting system, they say that you should always keep separate custody of assets, which would be the money, the bank accounts. You should keep that separate from the record keeping. You should keep that separate from the authorization, because this reduces the risks of fraud. I don't know about you, but I'm not too comfortable eliminating these risks out of our government. How many governors have we had go to jail in Illinois?
Too many.
Too many. Too many. That's one reason. Another reason is I've done a lot of research on this topic because one of the counter arguments is, oh, a lot of other states have done it. We could do that as well and save money. Well, I've researched a lot of those states, and most of them don't technically combine all of the aspects of treasurer and comptroller. Most of them still keep some pieces separate, and in many cases it becomes an appointed role. And that, I am never in favor of appointed roles. I'm always in favor of giving people the voice of choosing who they want in charge. So I don't, and I could see Illinois doing exactly that, combining a couple of things, keeping others separate, and then suddenly the governor gets another chance to appoint whoever the governor may be. Third reason that I don't support it is that the number figure that they've thrown out, they say we could save $10 million. Wouldn't that be great? Yes, it would. I've done some research on it. I want to know what exactly comprises that $10 million. It's not the salary of the comptroller or of the treasurer. They're not that important. I'd like to know where that money comes from. I've seen no detail for it, and I'm not going to approve any kind of consolidation that will increase the risks of fraud without a heck of a lot more backup and detail than I've been given. Maybe it's the accounting mind in me, but you should be able to detail exactly everything that you're gonna do and why you're gonna do it. I haven't seen that level of detail, so I don't trust it. I don't trust our government when they just throw a number at me. I want some detail. So those are 3 reasons, and I could go on about it, but I'll stop here and see if anyone's got another topic they'd like to switch to.
Yes, my name is Corey. I have a question for you, Mr. McMillen. You had talked about wanting to cut government spending and then possibly reduce taxes maybe thereafter, or would it be in conjunction with each other? And are there other forms of revenue that the federal government could do besides income tax? But that's kind of my question is, would you cut spending and then cut taxes, or would you do it simultaneously?
Right, well, yes, so in other words, if your bills and go down from $1,000 to $500, you wouldn't need as much revenue to pay, just in a generic sense. So there's a couple of variations. We could use the savings initially to start paying down the national debt. That would probably be the most responsible thing. So, but the ultimate goal would be it's going to take a long time to pay down $19 trillion of debt. So what I would suggest is we would reduce individual income taxes accordingly in conjunction with the percentage of the decrease in the size of the government, which would give you a corresponding decrease in the amount of revenue that you would need. So ultimately, the ultimate goal would be to effectively eliminate the individual income tax. From what I've read, about 38% of federal revenues are from individual income taxes. So if we can reduce the size of the federal government by 1/3, even if it takes 5 or 10 years, we could effectively, bring it down very low, like say 5 or 3%. And if we continue to make the government smaller, we could effectively eliminate it. It's just a matter of priorities and whoever you elect. It's just that, as I said earlier, we get these new programs and we get these new cabinet level agencies and they hire all these people. And the government actually doesn't have a revenue problem. It takes in all kinds of revenue, particularly in years when the stock market goes up, because they get all that tax revenue from capital gains and such. But we're still spending about $500 billion more per year than we're taking in, even in good years. So we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. And we have to reduce spending. And I don't hear a lot of politicians saying that. They do say they'll cut taxes, but they don't say how you're going to pay for it. So
yeah, that was kind of my follow-up as far as, so do we then try to reduce the debt? Because that's the other part of the equation.
Right.
You want to cut spending and cut taxes, but that debt is still
right. So you can do them both simultaneously. You can bring the debt down to a certain level. But unfortunately there's probably always going to be reasons to issue government debt, just like public companies issue bonds. If they want to build a new factory or do an acquisition, it might be a little difficult to get to zero public debt. But you can bring it down, or you can put a cap on how much you issue every year. But people still buy savings bonds and things like that, which are great things for your kids, maybe for college. But that does add to the national debt. But yeah, the possibilities are basically endless. You just have to elect the folks that are willing to cut the programs and cut the agencies and cut the federal employees.
Okay. Follow-up, is taxation bad?
I should defer to Steve on that, but
It's all right.
no, absolutely. If you're talking about taxation as opposed to things like tariffs and things like that, then it is. But you do need some sort of revenue to run the federal government. So I think it's a matter of being creative and how you raise that revenue. So in that sense, the fruit of our labors are being taken away from us by virtue of taxation. And they're always talking about the middle class. We got to help the middle class. We got to help the children, right? That's what they're always telling us. Get those darn taxes down really low, and you're going to help the middle class, and you're going to help the children, because they're going to have more money in their pockets, and they're going to go out and spend and invest that money, and it's going to grow the economy, and it's going to create jobs. Governments don't create jobs. Guys like Jess, and people like Roxanne, and people like Don and Jan, those are the people that create jobs.
question?
Yes, sir.
This one's for Ms. Ball. You previously touched on some of the accountability issues, and most would see transparency going hand in hand with accountability. On one of your last forums that was published, both you, Mendoza, and Munger gave responses of wanting more transparency in the office. How would your plan for transparency be better than what they proposed?
Well, I'm actually giving you specifics in my plan. And I'm not trying to be, or maybe I'm trying to be a little snarky, but but it's also true. I have specific points that I want to, specific things that I want to bring to the table that the comptroller's office can actually do. Chief among those is an established table of priority, laying that out there and telling all of you, these are the rules we're going to follow when we've only got a certain amount of money. Having that up there gives you the power to call the office out if they don't follow those rules. As far as I know, I'm the only one that's actually stated something specific like that. I also want to tie back payments to the budget. You know, that mysterious budget with very vague descriptions. Well, I want to make it absolutely specific. Say, these are what we're using your dollars for. And then I want to, within an online system, I want to link back those payments and say, and here is where we actually paid out for those budgeted line items. That way, all of you can see at a glance, oh, wow, they paid like $5 million when they only budgeted $1 million. What was the rest of that for? What was the reasoning for the overage? I mean, it's basic, fundamental accounting statistics that we're talking here that allow people to gauge how well a company, an entity, a unit is doing. And we don't have those in our government. We've got them at publicly traded companies, private companies. Anyone that is coming to you and wants you to invest in their firm is going to have those kinds of statistics. They're going to be able to show you, here's how well we're doing. Our government, you don't have that level of clarity, and I have not heard enough reasoning, enough specifics from the other three candidates on how they would address that. I want to actually address that. And those are just some of the ways. I also want to improve on the online databases that they have. They say that they're transparent, but it's surface level information only. Yes, the checkbook is online, but you can only see the date paid, the vendor paid, the amount paid. Nothing deeper than that. And I want to give you guys as deep a level of detail as possible. I want you guys to drown in the amount of detail that you can get from the Office of the Comptroller, because you guys should be the ones deciding how well the government's doing, not the government telling you how well it's doing. Thank you.
Is that also go in line with the financial reporting is well over a year overdue? Is it really we have to hold them accountable, or are they accountable to anybody else, let's say the federal government, to get those documents out? Or is it really just for us and we have to hold them accountable?
Theoretically, they should be held accountable by, we've got another office above the Office of the Comptroller called the Auditor General. And the Auditor General is supposed to be the one holding the Comptroller's office, holding their feet to the fire on getting these annual financial reports out. Problem is, in Illinois, our Auditor General was appointed by the governor. And again, it's someone who has no auditing experience. And I can tell you from having to deal with auditors myself in my current role, you need even higher levels of educational requirements and independence requirements if you want to audit. And the fact that we don't have them in that office, instead we've got someone who's appointed by the governor, who also currently appointed the comptroller, that just, you're not going to see feet held to the fire. It shouldn't be something that we, the people, we shouldn't have to hold their feet to the fire, but they should be accountable to us. And that they're not, that this goes, you know, I believe it was the 2014 report didn't get issued until 259 days later. 259 days past the 180-day due date. So you're talking over a year it took to get out just here's the financial health of the state for 1 year. And it reflects that a government that doesn't care about getting this information out. And it's not something that should happen. They should be absolutely accountable to us, and we shouldn't have to hold their feet to the fire, so I certainly will.
Other questions? Jan?
This is for both of you guys. As you've traveled around the state, have you seen a level of interest and acceptance of libertarian viewpoints increasing? And are people familiar with the whole philosophy in a way they haven't been before?
I'll start it since it's here. I can say, having traveled all across the state, people are absolutely ready for change. They are absolutely sick and tired of what they're seeing coming out of the two-sided coin of our current government structure. I would say that they don't know that much about libertarians, but a lot of them, like when I give them my business card, when I tell them I'm a libertarian, it's, oh, well, you're not part of one of the two parties, so that's already a vote in your favor. Now, what's a libertarian? And people are much more receptive this election than I've seen in a long time, and I think it's fantastic. People are, they are willing to listen, and I think the fact that in this election we've got two very real candidates that we're not looking for big political careers, we're not looking to dive into the machine unless it's to take it apart. They're very receptive to that, and so the campaign's been going very well in that regard. People have been very awesome about it.
Yeah, I've been with the Libertarian Party since the late 90s, and when I started, I never thought there would have been marriage equality and the spread of the legalization of marijuana. So we are moving, albeit maybe a little bit slowly, towards a libertarian society. And just to echo what Claire said, a lot of people may not know right away, but you start talking a few things. Well, do you think the government should do this? Do you think you should have the right to do this? And you learn that most people really are libertarian when you sit down and talk to them for 5-10 minutes. It's just that no one really has. And a lot of folks are like, oh, Gary Johnson, yeah, that's me. And his candidacy and the exposure, he's gotten a lot of media attention, which is great for the party. So when people see that, and then I say, well, I'm with the same party that he is, they say, oh yeah, I like him, so I think I'll look into you. So definitely an acceptance. I mean, I can't compare it to anything that I've done before because this is my first run. But even the Senate totals have gone, for the last, at least in my head, for the last 3 Senate campaigns has gone from 50,000 to 85,000 to the last candidate got 136,000 votes. So we're definitely going up, and I hope to get more than the 136,000 just to keep the streak going. So absolutely, yeah. There's been a really good acceptance. Thanks for the question.
Other question? Don?
Our statewide race, our presidential race, the Senate race, the controller's race, those vote totals all mean that if we do well in the ballot box, we're going to have to put in infrastructure to support candidates according to state laws. Is that not correct? I mean,
Right.
what are those levels? Where do we have to be in order to do that?
Right. So we would be an established party. So
Right.
we would. I think it's too bad Lex isn't here. He would know, but it would be incumbent on us to have like a series of precinct captains and have more of an organization that the statewide that the current the major parties do. So that would be some work, and that'll be work that I'm sure a lot of folks would be happy to undertake if we get the 5%.
So everybody in here is potentially a precinct captain or potentially a committeeman, right?
Absolutely. And
All
don't,
right, so sign up before you leave.
My understanding is you only need about, I think, 10 folks to sign a piece of paper that allows you to be a precinct captain. So it's not like the 53,000 that we had to get.
Kristen?
I was just going to say, we formed a task force, and I'm actually chair of the task force. So we've put together to tackle that problem because we want to be ahead of it. There's a timeline associated with when we have to meet each requirement. And so our state operating committee would be comprised of precinct committeemen. So we're starting to get the ball rolling on that. We also have to rewrite our bylaws because the state thinks that it knows how to run a party better than what we've put together. So we sort of have to be compliant with their wishes. Unfortunately, no Libertarian is into that, but that's a good problem to have if we become established. So.
Any other questions?
On that?
Go for it.
A little bit. First off, trying to get Libertarians all in line is a little like herding cats. Not like, oh no, you don't. I'm going to do it my way or not at all. But in general, with established party status, right now we're considered, every time we run, we're considered a new party. That's because we have not received at or more than 5% of the general vote in any election. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but the key difference between a new party and an established party is just the level of work you have to put in to actually get on the ballot. If you're a new party, you have to collect 25,000 signatures in order to get on the ballot. Whereas if you're one of the established parties, you only need to collect 5,000. Why 5 times more the number of signatures? There's no good reason. There's the obvious reason, is that it makes it harder for the new parties to get on the ballot. And it increases the levels all the way down. I know one question that I've gotten asked a couple of different times is, how come we don't see you Libertarians should run more locally, how come we don't see you more on the local level? And it's the same reasoning, is that we'll be in, I know that one friend of ours he's a Constitution Party member, but we like him anyway. He ran in his area and the established parties only had to collect, I think it was 500 signatures. This is within a certain district, so you know how nicely these districts can be drawn. And he had to collect 2,700 signatures. He managed to collect about 3,100, but again, because of the district, you can't always trust. They immediately challenged his signatures. They went through line by line. They managed to whittle it down to below the 2,700 mark to get him knocked off the ballot. Any level of involvement that Libertarians want to get in on has these kinds of challenges that will be lessened if we can get to that 5%, that magical 5%, and then we've got our task force ready and waiting.
We're very excited to do all this work.
We are, because it means less work down the line.
Yes.
That means more time and energy more time, energy, and money that we can spend on the candidates themselves, on running their campaigns, on getting the word out. There's also timing related to new parties, which they really get you on the timing. We're not allowed to collect our signatures but in December of the prior year, the way the two established parties are. We have to wait until the very end of March, and then we get a 90-day window to collect those 25,000 plus signatures. So that's, as you all know, that is prime electioneering season. That's when candidates and the parties should be gearing up and getting their people ready. But no, we have to spend our time and energy just to get on the ballot. So it will mean a lot, and we are working hard, diligently. Right over there, you can ask her how much work she's done already. More to come, but we are ready, we are willing, we can't wait to have that problem.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? There are some. Yes, sir.
My question's for Kent on term limits. I saw on your YouTube video you said you would only serve 1 term if you were elected.
That's correct.
If it were a successful term and it was the will of the people for you to serve another, would you?
No. In fact, like I told Don, if I'm forced to run again, I will not vote for myself because I don't vote for incumbents. No one person is indispensable to an office. So if I am elected by the end of that 6-year term, I would hope to turn the keys over to a younger, smarter Libertarian, which in my case will not be too difficult. But thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Jan.
This is for both of you as well. I know sometimes just in what we've been doing with the Opry Gazette, we hear people confuse capitalism, free market capitalism, crony capitalism, and as far as we try to share the difference, could you guys elaborate on that?
I can certainly try. I've had my head buried in accounting figures and all that fun stuff, but in general, and I have quite a few people that I talk to about this who seem to confuse capitalism with crony capitalism. One friend in particular, he talks about how, I'm trying to think of a good example here. And I can't think of a good example right now, but capitalism is basically let's say you want to provide a widget to the people. The people want this widget, and you've developed, everybody loves this widget. So then Steve and Kent and everybody else says, I can make a widget better and make it cheaper for all of you. So they get into the business of it. Well, that's straight up capitalism right there. It's many people coming in and providing services or goods to others for a price that you on the receiving end you think is fair. Crony capitalism would be if, all right, Steve and Kent have jumped into the game, and I don't like that. So I've been there the longest. I'm the biggest of the companies. Well, now I start, giving some donations. I start funneling money to support my candidates. Oh, I believe really strongly in you as a state legislator. And then once they get in there, well, I supported you very strongly to be my legislator, so now how about this new bill that you're thinking of putting in place? How about you put a few rules in place that make it easy for me and harder for my competition? And by doing that, now maybe Steve has higher taxes because he's a smaller business, or there's now an entrance fee to actually start selling those widgets and can't afford the entrance fee. Well, now they're no longer in the market. Now it's all me, and now I can charge all of you as much as I'd like because you can't go anywhere else to get a widget. That's not capitalism. That is crony capitalism, at least for me. And maybe I'm absolutely butchering my my explanation of it, but no, please take it over from me. I'll let Ken give it a shot now.
And that's all I can do. I've talked about the increase in the size of government, particularly in the last 50 years. Well, certain companies and certain peoples benefit from when the government gets bigger. A good example is the defense industry. I've read on a couple of different occasions that particularly with Republican lawmakers, certain Republican lawmakers, they get nice contributions from defense contractors. Then you wonder why we spend nearly $600 billion a year on the military. Do we need to spend $600 billion a year in the military? I say no, but to me that's an example of crony capitalism where a business forms a relationship with a politician and their profits go up, which is really the goal of capitalism, but it's done by virtue of their relationship with an elected officials, and in the end the taxpayers pay for it. So capitalism in its pure sense would be what Claire was just saying, when everybody gets an even playing field, and you get to own your business and make your profits. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Either you fold your tent or you try something else. But the guy next door shouldn't get a special favor by virtue of the fact that he knows the local congressman and he gets a tip or he gets some sort of a bonus or something, and you don't. So if it's an unfair playing field, then that, to me, that's crony capitalism.
We've had a change of people here. Jess had to take off. So any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Just for Mr. McMillen, another just curiosity on my point. I know you touched on what you would like to see for auditing and reduction within the first 100 days. You've served one term for 6 years. Is there any particular Senate committee you would be interested in trying to get on and affect change from that individual level? Because I know most senators can only choose one or only have enough time. Do you have a priority of where you think you would do the most good on a committee?
Right, so thank you for the question. Yeah, so it would be something like either the budget committee or the appropriations committee, any kind of committee that allocates the money, and you take a look at the money and whether it's deservedly so that it deserves the spending. So any committee that deals with the budget and the spending of the federal budget.
And if I didn't get that, I would fall back to judiciary, because I have a legal background. And I thought, you know, just from my background there, that would be interesting to do.
Anybody else? Well, let's give these folks a round of applause. Yeah, you're gonna close some statement.
Okay, all the ladies first.
Just one.
All right.
Vote Claire.
I want to thank you all for coming out today. It's been really nice talking and just sharing. So many of these events that we've gone to, we've been up there with a lot of the other candidates, either in our races or in other local races, and it's nice to be around just, you know, real people. I am the only accountant that's running in this race. I am, and if I were elected, it would be the first time we've ever had an accountant looking over the finances in Illinois. I think that that's really important. And I think it's even more important to get someone in there who is truly independent of the two-party system. You're going to find that from me. You're going to find that from a Libertarian. I don't care which side's doing it. I don't want any part of it. I just want to report honestly and accurately to all of you, to all of us, exactly where our tax dollars are going and exactly why they're going that way, so that all of you can decide how well you think your government is running. That level of transparency, that level of accountability has been missing in Illinois and in government in general for a very long time. And I want to come in and do the job of comptroller and provide that to all of you, because we deserve it. We all work hard just trying to live our lives, and we deserve to have that level of accountability. If you want to check out more about me, you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook. I'm on both of those, Claire Ball for Illinois. My website is claireballforillinois.com. Thank you very much for coming out today, and with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kent. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Most polls that I've seen for as long as I can remember put the federal Congress or the Senate and the House of Representatives favorability rating at no more than 15%. But yet, incumbents tend to get reelected time and time again, a lot of times by huge margins. So there's somewhat of a disconnect there. So I'd like you to think of two things for this election. Stand with me in going against the status quo, and stand with me to usher in a new era of fiscal and personal responsibility. And with that, I will thank you for coming out tonight, for this afternoon, and for giving up your Sunday afternoon. It's a beautiful day out, and spend a little bit of time with a couple Libertarians from the Chicago area. My website is kent4senate.com. That's also my Twitter handle and my Facebook. So a few folks come in that I haven't shook your hand and given you a card yet. I will definitely do that as soon as we wrap up. But thank you again so much for coming out today.
Thank you.